I do. Right. So, welcome to episode 3, uh, democracy. That's what we're going to talk about this week, and it's a real ball ache of a topic, isn't it? Because we get a little bit carried away with what it might mean and what it does mean to us, and we're kind of objective about it. So, that's where we're going with this one this week. What's that? Why Gonzo? I hear you ask. Well, let me tell you. Gonzo journalism around Hunter Thompson, um, counterculture, 60s counterculture, lots of drug, lots of violence, lots of sex, lots of rock and roll, alcohol, that sort of thing. It was about this direct and subjective experience that we have when he's reporting on things. So it's not objective journalism as journalism kind of should be, but it was infused with a personal story. Whatever happened with Matey Boy, involving himself, embroidering himself in the story, and so it became this subjective thing. So I chose to call this Gonzo. I'm taking some topics. I'm chucking my own insanity into it, and I've got a certificate. I am actually genuinely mental. I'm paid to not go near the public, so I can say that without any stigma involved with it. So bringing my own take on things, my own experience on things, to see where we go with that, and hopefully it's of interest to anybody at all. That'd be really cool if it was. So hit subscribe, hit like, and all that sort of stuff. Send me knickers in the post if you want. Actually, do it if you don't want as well. Actually, all of you send me knickers. And make your nans listen to this, because that would be really. I fucking like that. It'd be cool. Right, so um, democracy. Shit, where do you start with that? We we live in the free world, yeah. So we got this system that means that we don't have no despots that tell us what to do. We don't have no totalitarian state that demands we live in a certain way, which is cool, right? Because that kind of feels like fascism, doesn't it? Um, And we're in a time where we throw the fascist word around quite a bit. If we don't agree with someone, then they're a Nazi, which is quite a heavy fucking accusation to be making for someone just as they don't have the same opinions of you. And of course, on the other side, you get called a snowflake, for being left wing, because left wing and liberal is no longer cool, whereas it was for quite some time. So we've moved a little bit further to the right. Look at me subconsciously going to the left. We've moved a little bit further to the right in this part in history, and I think it probably does that. I think it probably swings from left to right, liberal to conservative, small c. We're a little bit more commonsensical, perhaps that's what it means. But certainly more ordered than we view the left to be. Why does it do that? I don't know. I think there's got to be a bit of give and take, isn't there? There's got to be a bit of we switch it up in how we feel. Sometimes we're a little bit looser, and then we draw it back a bit. And sometimes we've stuck to our hard. Stuck to our guns. We've been hard and fast on something, and then we go, let's just chill the fuck out again. Let's relax a little bit and draw it back. So I guess that's the rhythm of us. Well, I'm bipolar, so I probably do that 3 or 4 times in the course of a sentence. But that's the rhythm of humans. We do that swing from hectic to less hectic, to being relaxed and cool about things, to being a lot more harder on things. And that's sort of how we separate the two-party system that we've got with democracy. So I'm guessing that really we do that as a society too, as we do that as a culture as well. We kind of go through that cyclical phase of being cool, not so cool, being hard, being soft, I guess. Circadian rhythm sort of shit. But I don't know. Just a hunch that I've got. Correct me if I'm wrong. Don't correct me at all. I don't like it. It's not a democracy here. It's totalitarian. This is. That's what I've got. No guests. Don't want somebody else's view. And that's the thing about democracy, isn't it? Democracy is only ever going to be what you are presented with. So which is different from what we see it as, isn't it? We see it as that we've got some say in the governance of the culture we live in, the society we live in. that we have elected representatives that hopefully present the types of expressions of policy that we'd hope them to express. And of course, we don't always get our say in that because we vote, you know. So it's very different from a socialist system that was very trendy. You know, that liberal idea of not necessarily going full on communist with things, but having this equity, having this fairness for all. It's you you allow opportunity. Everyone's presented with the right to have the same sort of opportunities. Socialist thinking, of course. What we've got is we've got a capitalist way of rewarding people for their efforts and their achievements. You know, so it's very different from a socialist sort of setup. Although liberalism was it was cool for a long time, and I think I'd thought of myself for a long time as being on the left. Certainly haven't swung to the right. I'm not there with that, but I think I like to navigate a middle ground much more than I ever did. Not that matters. I think we all, like I say, we all chop and change, that sort of thing. But that's where we're at with things. I think it really hit home for me, and I think it did for a lot of people as well when we done a Brexit and when we done a Trump. If you watch the media, which I think, you know, people consider the mainstream media, the dinosaur media, legacy media, whatever you think it is, as having the although, you know, for those on the left, I would say actually it's they're very sort of, they support the right wing in this country, or the soft right. So they support conservative principles. Like pretty much they sidetrack Jeremy Corbyn. They sidetrack this idea of a left, you know. So either side is saying, well, the mainstream media, the legacy media, is not particularly for them. But I think when Trump got in, the media in America seemed. Why am I talking about America? Well, because I think England and America, both having the English language, sort of dominate cultural representation. So I don't think they're any better than any other culture. I don't think they're any better than any other nationality, certainly. But I think they have tended to dominate. I think, you know, there's this history of empire with the British Empire. You know, one of the controlling powers of the globe for a long time. America comes through and dominates that for at least the part, I guess 100 years or so, maybe longer. And because we share the same language, we sort of piggyback on their superpower status. So I say America because it's like a guiding principle. In its version of democracy, kind of gives us our idea about where our democracy is, although their constitution is a little bit different from us. So the media, when they were representing the views of the people, when they were presenting what was supposedly how everyone sort of saw and sat with things, was going towards this Hillary victory, and that was like a given with all the news stations. And then we woke up and that wasn't the fucking case. And it really started to show how mainstream media had lost it's lost its finger on the pulse in terms of what the people were actually thinking, people are actually doing. And then you had the same thing with Brexit. So mainstream media was presenting this argument that we were all wanted to stay in this union with Europe, and then we woke up and it wasn't that at all. And of course, everything was being thrown around at the time that it was, you know, you're either a snowflake or you're a Nazi. You know, if you voted for Brexit, it's because you're a racist. You know, don't get me wrong, there's a certain amount of racists that did. You know, I know quite a lot of people that voted it because they somehow thought it was going to make immigration a bit easier. You know. For me, and that shows a really sort of short-sighted understanding of how migration works, and certainly our migration has made a difference to us. Do you know what I mean? I don't think without sort of foreign, in inverted commas, people's that have influenced infrastructure, whether it be the NHS or the transport system or anything like that throughout our history. I think if we didn't have that, then we'd fall flat on our face in what we've got now. So, my views on migration and immigration are certainly different from that. I think perhaps if you're gonna be hard and fast on immigration policy or sets of beliefs, then really you've got to look at foreign policy as well, because that shit influences it. If you're bombing the fuck out of the country, you kind of want to leave it. I think if a country is not having the fuck bombed out of it, you kind of want to go to that one. So it's all embroiled, and I don't think everyone really sort of sees that in a bigger picture, perhaps, or doesn't care. Maybe, I don't know. So there's a thing to the Brexit. There was an undercurrent of racism, and I think probably more racists voted for the exit of the European Union than they did to stay. However, not everyone that voted to leave was a racist. For the first time in a long time, I didn't know which way to vote on that one myself. So I spoiled my ballot paper, which is what I do when I'm not sure, because there isn't a box that says not sure. I was having a conversation with a mate earlier on who, and we said, have a fucking box that says not sure. Yes, no, don't know. Let's come back to it. I think we do that. We as people, if we can't make a choice on something, do I want that off the shelf or do I want that off the shelf? We allow ourselves to sit and ponder that shit for a little while until we go along and really have a decision that we're happy with. For some reason, our democracy has never given us that option, so it doesn't give us the option to go back and go, no, we're not sure, so we'll fucking think about it a little bit more. We'll sit with the idea, ponder it, come up with some pros and cons, and then we'll go back and do it. This is your time. You've had your fucking chance. Yes or no, you bastard. That's kind of how it works. So I wasn't sure. Spoiled my ballot paper. For me, it was about logging my democratic right not to vote. Okay, so people fought and died for certain peoples to have the vote. I mean, the one that we sort of hark back to is in this country was particularly the right to vote for women, of the suffragettes movement. So people literally laid their life on the line for that to happen. And it wasn't a great deal before that the working class had the right, or didn't have the right to vote, and they were afforded that just a little bit before women were allowed to. So as somebody that comes from the working class or lower working class, I kind of always had that axe to grind, that it took a lot for us to get to a place where we could have a go at this fucking democracy thing. So I was going to do it. I had that sort of obligation to my, to the heritage that I've got, to the legacy that other working class people have got, that I felt some sort of solidarity with. So I had to vote. That was what you do to say thank you to them for fighting and dying for it. So if I couldn't make up my mind, or I genuinely thought these are all just big steaming piles of piss and not real options of fucking how to govern a country, then I'd log my democratic right not to vote, spoil my ballot paper. So that's what I did on Brexit. That's what I did there. I had a friend that was fucking wonderful guy. I love him bits. And I still do. I just don't see him as much as I'd like to. And he always used to say to me, "Don't vote. It only encourages them." And I thought it was really, really funny at the time. And I quote him saying that all the time because it's funny. But there's also something really fucking profound in that, isn't there? If we don't want this system and we don't turn up, what happens? What happens if we just pull the rug out from underneath them, Which I like. I like the idea. It's a sort of a peaceful revolution, isn't it? Your game ain't working. We ain't fucking playing it. Off we go. See you later. We're not doing it. We're pulling our interests out of that. We'll have our toys back. Fuck off. When that happens, there was a time when I think there was more people that phoned up for X Factor and said, "Yeah, no, I want this girl to win because she does it really good. Yeah, no, I like her dance and shit." More people phoned in for that than they did vote. But it still went ahead anyhow. We still, they took the count of what was there. That the 80% that bothered to turn up. I think it was lower than that. Actually, I think it was about 60% that bothered to turn up. We take the percentage of that's got the most votes, and they're the one that won. Or as we saw with a coalition government, they just fucking power share. They just got into bed with each other and formed a group that was, it wasn't like a super group. It was no. I can't even think of any super groups now. Jimmy Park, Robert Page, they sort of ended up with something after Led Zeppelin, didn't they? I don't know. Can't remember. I really can't remember. White guys with guitars, man. It's been a while. Opposing ends of what should be the political spectrum got into bed with each other and formed a power sharing government, a coalition. So as it wasn't a hung parliament and we had to go back and do it all again. And I think that was one of the times when I'd sort of really decided that actually this democratic system is not one that's serving us; it's serving itself. Although it's always been that hint of it, it's always been that hint that no one's doing it properly. They're all self-serving pricks. And certainly when it was their expenses came out, I don't have a fucking £200,000 duck house or whatever it was. You know what I mean? I don't. I don't spend that money on rolls of wallpaper. I chuck these things up on the wall instead. I don't do that. I don't know anyone else that does do that too. So I think we started to get this sense that the people that we apparently are electing, even though we're not necessarily voting for them, but it doesn't work like that anyhow, does it? We vote in locally, and then locally, whoever the amount of people that we voted in locally all add up to the one that's going to win, because it's a fucking game. They win the game of democracy for that term, for that 4 years. Man, I waffle sometimes. Don't know. I really do. But anyhow, I've completely lost my train of thought on that one. But that's fine. We'll come back to that if it comes back. I'm pretty sure it won't, because I damaged my brain a little bit with all the drugs I used to take. I'm not blaming it on age. It was the drugs. So yeah, both sides, of the political spectrum, got into bed with each other. That really hit home about how much it was about power. When the expenses were sort of, when they come out, it really, really sort of explained to the majority of us mere mortals that these guys, because they're genuinely sort of male, and if they're not male, they're existing within a masculine system. People say, "Well, isn't it wonderful that we had Margaret Thatcher and Theresa May? They were, that we had women as prime ministers leading the country." Not sure either of them really showed any feminine principles. Not to say that they should have been cooking or cleaning. That's far from having that sort of sexist view. But there's nothing that's particularly maternal about them. There's nothing that's particularly nurturing. Some of these qualities that we associate with the way that perhaps a more feminine take on controlling things happen. Like a home, when you've got a traditional setup and you've got a mother that's caring and nurturing. The more caregivers are female, that sort of thing, right? So I'm not putting in sexist stereotypes. I certainly don't want to look to do that anytime soon. But what I get at is that Thatcher wasn't bringing womanly values into this. Thatcher was living in a male world. The things that she done were aggressive. I mean, there's pictures of her in a fucking tank. Do you know what I mean? She done her Falklands just, so she could like sort of, kick people's ass and show how strong she was, and this lady's not for turning and all that sort of gubbins. She was, she's a geezer, man. She was a geezer, had a bigger dick than me. Simple, was not maternal at all. There was not. Of course, she had some children. They tried to do a coup, didn't they? Very, very corrupt. So that was where we were going in that earlier on, wasn't it? It was how these guys at the top were sifting off, profiting. It was about consolidation of power, and it was really divorced from where we are with what we think it is that these people should be doing. Because essentially they're civil servants, aren't they? We ask them to represent us to get shit sorted. Make sure the trains run on time. That old analogy to the efficacy of Nazi Germany, that at least the trains run on time. We want that. We want the civil service to be efficient. We want shit to happen the way we want it to happen. And of course, what we've seen with Western democracy is, although we all have a right to vote, although we all consider that our vote influences the way in which things are managed, the way in which things are governed and organised, is something that we have some influence over. And actually, more and more we're seeing that we don't. More and more we're seeing that there is like an elite. Not to be conspiracy minded, although I do think the Queen is a child-eating space lizard. Let's get that out there and straight right from the off. But I think there's this elite that make policy, make decisions. They influence the way that our culture is expressed, the freedoms that we can explore, the possibilities that we are afforded. They control all of that. I mean, not in a despotic way, but they softly influence these things. And behind that is a lot of money. So it comes down to really where is it, who's being served, because we're not voting in civil servants, are we? We're not voting in people that are just making sure the trains run on time. We're believing there's an illusion of this democracy, that we're voting in people that are representing us when actually they're representing the interests of money. I think certainly some of the conspiracies around C-19 are that the pharmaceutical companies are behind this drive to bring in vaccines, to relax laws that allow them to sort of push their agenda a little bit more. And you can go down the conspiracy theory route with that all you want. That's fine. That's your opinion. And I think some of it's got some weight to it. But more than that, I think we see drawn large the relationship between large entities like the pharmaceutical industry, and you certainly saw it with tobacco companies lobbying in the United States to get information suppressed for a long time. And there was a bit of a to and fro then. I think they, there was an amount of pressure on them to admit that they were cancer causing. So there can be a little bit of people power, but not a great deal, because they managed to lobby for a long time to have a lot of information suppressed. So they kind of controlled how information was put across. And of course, that's one of the things we want to do. We want a democracy that tells us how things are truthfully. We've chosen not to go down the socialist route, not to have a communist setup where a dictator, whether it's an evil dictator or somebody that stands there like in a romanticized Castro thing. There was somebody that saw things through over decades. We want to believe that they're telling us the truth, and of course, one of the things that's always sort of leveled against the radical left of Eastern Europe, China, Cuba, is that they were propagandists, that they gave a view of the world that was their view, and it wasn't necessarily the truth, So, of course, we got this illusion that doesn't happen with Western democracy, but it kind of fucking does, right? We know that. So what do we do with it now? Because it's not cool to go to the right, No one wants to be called a fascist. No one wants to be a fascist. No one wants to really be overtly discriminating against anybody. I don't know anyone says, "Oh, let's have an evil system. That'd be really cool. Let's do that. Let's pick somebody that we don't like and fuck the arse out of them until they're not on the planet anymore." I'm pretty sure none of us are really up for that. We wouldn't choose that, But we've also made it quite clear that we wouldn't choose to have the state own and tell us everything, and tell us everything, and determine what we can believe. Because you couldn't express you couldn't express religious beliefs in communist countries. And of course, nobody particularly wants to be religious nowadays. It's not cool to be religious, but actually, it's where a lot of us get our morality from. It's where a lot of us the ethics are born from, if they're not being told to us. So to not have that, to have everything sort of fed down to you, of course, that's something that we've chosen not to have anyhow. And I think largely communism's died. It's not. If it was a two-party race between two ideologies, it was fucking beaten squarely by capitalism. There's argument out there in advanced capitalism. So capitalism is the vehicle, is the driving force behind democracy, and not necessarily the other way around. Democracy is something that serves us. It's the idea of governance, but actually, it would appear more that the illusion of free choice that we've got is something that serves a capitalist agenda. And a bunch of zeros and ones, has it got an agenda? Can it do that? It's like a language. We're in metaphysics. Do you know what I mean? Is a language free? Does it have an autonomy of its own? Does it develop independently from human thought? Don't know. That's a subject for another podcast. A subject for somebody that's got a far more scientific brain than I have. But there is a drive, isn't there, with capitalism? There is a drive that more money, more power, money makes money. Lots of money creates power. So there is an agenda there, which is different from what was played out in the communist countries. I think what's really become significant to me lately, and certainly some of the work of Jordan Peterson, who's called up for being right wing a lot, I think is actually more, rational, very very rational clinical psychologist, and a very reasonable human, and actually fights a lot for speech, so which doesn't really fall under that Nazi umbrella, free speech, Sort of hit home that it's kind of okay to wear the hammer and sickle. We romanticize that left wing, Che Guevara t-shirts, that sort of thing. You don't see that many goring t-shirts, Hitler's not something you can get away with wearing. You can't. I'm pretty sure you can't trade in swastika items in Nazi memorabilia anymore. I'm pretty sure you can't. You can with the communist stuff. So we have that, and equally, the gulags killed as many, probably more than was killed in the prison war camps and the detention centre. I can't think what they're called now. They gas large amounts of Jews and Gypsies and other minority groups. Most obviously, it was the Jewish communities that were persecuted in the Holocaust. Gas chambers. That's gas chambers. Yeah, chambers with gas. That was the one. So the Russian version of that had very very similar. There was as many people sort of killed in those. I mean, there was the Boxer Revolution, the Cultural Revolution of Mao. Wholesale killed swathes of its society. So we romanticize the left, demonize the right, and actually those extremes are as bad as each other. And I think we see this certainly with movements like Antifa at the moment. That are pointing at you and screaming and shouting and smashing shit up, saying you can't be a fascist. Well, you're kind of doing that in a fascist way. It's like saying to your kids, stop fucking swearing. There's an innate hypocrisy to that. And I'm pretty sure with those as well, whether they've been infiltrated by people and it's about divide and conquer or not. Again, conspiracy theory route. Although I think there's probably something to that. It's not. Their movement isn't making a difference. It's making people more ingrained with the views that they already held. So I think what we're finding is that we need to we need to be able to voice our democratic right, because our democratic right is to protest. Our democratic right is to, as the Americans got a constitution, we've got democratic right too, to fucking disagree, to protest, to petition, to hold our own meeting places where we can discuss things. That's that freedom of speech and that freedom to oppose. Um, so when that's taken away, that's a problem. When that's taken away, that's really affecting whether we've got that freedom of that democracy says it's got or not. So I was at a rally recently, and the police, who on an individual level I have great respect for. I don't think you go into the police force wanting to hurt people. I don't think you go into the police force wanting to be a criminal with a badge. I don't think that. As an entity, I kind of don't trust the police force anymore. As an entity, I'm worried that what they're doing is they're protecting a set of ideologies that are not necessarily ours. We pay our taxes, they work for us. So at this rally recently, they used the kettling that they do, where they sort of herd people like sheep. And they done this particularly around the BBC. And the people protest that our democratic right, our freedom of speech to show an opposition to a certain set of ideologies was directed at the BBC for its protection and its harbouring of individual and networks of paedophiles over the years, and particularly um, this one statue that's outside, carving. I forget the guy's name. I don't even want to say the guy's name. But after his death, it came out that he was a paedophile, slept with his children, raped his children. Didn't sleep with them, he fucking raped them. It's different, yeah. And his dog, I believe, as well, just to show. Not that we can get any lower than that, but just show the fucking deprivation. But I think it was very, very, very much aware that he was one of those types of guys. Like when we go back and we say, well, Jimmy Savile, yeah, kind of everyone knew. Everyone was, it's a bit like it's what he does. You know what I mean? It's just, we let him out. He does a lot of work for charity, so it all balances out. It was a time when that power structure was a lot more lenient on things that are fucking abhorrent. So that was what the protest was really sort of aimed at when it went to the BBC, was to say, look, you've got this heritage of protection for these evil. There's no other word for it. If you're raping children, you're evil. It's that simple. It's not a fucking choice. It's not a preference. It's not a sexual preference. It's not a way of living. It's fucking evil. If you've not got the capacity to choose, you've not got the capacity to understand whether you share your body with another person, then that's fucking rape. That's rape of children. No way about it. That's evil. So the BBC's got this legacy of protecting and harbouring paedophiles. So this one monument that they've got outside of theirs, which has become symbolic of that, they've refused to take down. Even though there's many people that are and of course the BBC is unique in its way that it's publicly funded. We are told that we have to pay for it, although you don't have to. You can go online, you can register not to pay your license fee if you don't watch live television, if you don't have any of the BBC stuff. Now, because I'm assuming you're watching this on YouTube or a podcast or whatever, we've got loads of alternative media now, so I urge you, stop fucking paying them. Like we say, this democracy illusion that we've got is actually a capitalist system. So the money talks. Don't fucking pay them. They can't carry on harbouring, protecting paedophiles, or not. At least not fucking apologising for their legacy of doing that. By taking down this symbolic carving outside of their building. Now, the reason for talking about this is because we were kettled by the police, who are that we pay their wages, they defend the people and keep the people safe, and they stop us from having negative impact from criminal forces. They didn't do that. They protected a corporation that for one reason or another, largely we believe to be we believe them to be not as sound as we once believed them to be. Whether we all think that they're hardened paedophiles, or whether we think that they did that in the past, and it was only a small minor thing. It was only one or two, and it couldn't be else. It wasn't endemic of the corporation. Whatever side of the fence you fall on with that, there is an issue with the BBC being protected by the police rather than the police supporting our right to air our objections and our rights to have an opposing view. So that really made me wonder, because we don't live in a state that's tyranny. We don't live in a state where we don't have freedom of speech. We don't. No one's censoring me. I'm saying what the fuck I want right now. So we don't live in that. It's not that communist regime. It's not that Nazi regime. But what we also don't have is absolute freedom that we are told that we have. We're given a little bit of it. We got a taste of it, and then they sort of pull it back, and they control us that little bit more. It's not like 1984. There isn't a big boot that's come down, a big brother onto our heads. We've invited him in. And this is my main concern with our illusion of democracy, is because it's actually just a vehicle for capitalism to play out its ideology, where it allows those who have consolidated wealth to have more power and to maintain and sustain that power. That ideology is dependent on the financial and cultural oppression of large amounts of people for it to work. You can't have rich without having poor. So when that's dressed up as a political system that we've all got choice in, I'm not sure that that's really what's going on. It's because it's like I say, it's just a vehicle for capitalism. It's just a vehicle for people consolidating their wealth and their power and wielding that over us. But we do still have an amount of free speech. Now, the issue that I've got with wondering whether we should go down the conspiracy theory route and understand that all of that has got some weight to it and we need to rise up, or whether we should just go along and go, oh, no, it's all cool. No worry about it. It is what it says it is. No one's particularly lying about anything. They're doing the best they can, and they're all in it for the right reasons. I think I made clear which side I live on there. You had big data, yeah. So you have algorithms that take all of our expressions, when we're putting our pictures up on social media, when we're voicing our opinions, the things that we like, the things that we engage with, and it feeds those back to us as though we're, it's that feedback loop stuff, as though that's the world that everyone else is sharing, and it can influence things. So of course there's that big thing at the moment about how much did Russian and Chinese influence over big data, over the way that algorithms are actually working, that is influencing our sets of beliefs that make us vote in a certain way or not vote in a certain way. So this is the thing about democracy that's really worrying as we move forward. We believe that we're making a choice, but are we necessarily making that choice based on a real understanding of the world we're in? If a certain picture is painted for us and that's the world that we understand, then we're not necessarily well informed enough to be making our decisions. So that's a real worry. So that's this potential of the internet, this potential of alternative medias being co-opted by something that's already corrupt. In legacy media and mainstream media, in corrupt politics, in corrupt systems that control us, it's influencing without us really understanding how it's influencing our choices. So we've got an illusion of choice. We've got a muck democracy, but it's really you know, it's boxed in. And actually, how much choice have we really got if we can't see what's beyond our peripheral vision? If we can't turn around and really fucking see the world, how much can we really choose then? You know, so that's something that's interesting. What's also interesting is it can have exactly the opposite response if there is transparency with it. If we understand how things are working, um, we can democratize in a real sense access to information. We've got more shit, more access to information than we've ever had. You know, there's so many facts that we just could not have got before the internet. You know, and largely everyone's got access to the internet. Largely, the world over. You know, it's become, you know, learning is no longer something that just the rich can do. We can do that as well. So of course there is a big effort to make sure that we maintain that equality of opportunity, that equality of access to possibilities. So one of the things that was really interesting in the last election was an app that helped you to understand what policies each party had, because they don't necessarily say that. They kind of beat each other down in the media and put a lot of money into advertising in certain ways to say, well, they're really bad for this, or they're really terrible for that, or did you know this one used to fuck a fish, or whatever it is, you know, to put us off. Well, they don't necessarily say this is what we're going to do. Or if they do, it's a fucking lie. You know, we're gonna put loads of money into the NHS. Look, we've got these crazy figures about how much we're gonna put into the NHS, and then they don't. And not only do they not do that, but they sell half of it, and then we all clap for them. Woo, well done, nurses, brilliant. We're not gonna pay you, but we'll give you a round of applause. So they tell us these things that they don't necessarily do in the way that they're presenting that to us in their sort of media machine. But this app was really fascinating because it actually got down to the nitty gritty of what other policies were and what, you know, what your elected representatives, so the the guys and girls that are in local politics that really do have a way of influencing governance of communities. So you put all your information into this app. You yes, I like this. No, I don't like. Yes, I agree with that. This is my view on that, and it comes out with this is who you should vote for. No, I like that. I think that's a real sort of positive way forward because it is about how we relate to the policies. Then it is about how we relate to this is what we believe. Who else fucking believes that? Because that's where we're going to go with it. That's a really cool thing. If it's not corrupted, it's a really cool thing. If it's not co-opted by somebody nefarious, you know. Um, so that's the difficult thing. How much can we trust technology not to have algorithms that were, you know, the whole Huawei thing? Can we trust 5G because it's you know, there's a domineering superpower that's perhaps influencing in a way that we can't trust, you know. So we need complete opacity, complete transparency, um, and also we need to be able to understand the machinations of these things so we can have an informed opinion on them. So that's if that democracy even works. Now, what we've had for as long as I can remember, certainly in my life, you know, is wars in places that have setups of governance, setups of how communities and then societies are organized that are different from our own. We somehow primitivized them and believe that if we bomb the fuck out of their infrastructure, we can then give them democracy. We can then give them our version of, you know, white Western version of how to organize and govern your communities and societies because we're right. We're white and polite. We got it right. You know, it's that really fucking offensive you know, self-entitled view that you know, empire type view that we still have when we ship into another country that's got slightly different ways of doing things to us and force freedom of speech onto them. We force freedom to elect officials onto them. So we've toppled dictators in other countries, you know. I think Pinochet was the one that really sort of hit home to me about that because he was a real nasty bastard in Chile, killed a lot of people, completely supported by the Thatcher uh, cabinet. Uh, and she constantly refused to apologise for the crimes that he committed that she supported, um, because it was beneficial to the West, because it went down a route that was more on the surface democratic than it was despotic, more democratic than it was a dictatorship. So of course we got that, and we've seen that for a long time now. There are impacts on that which are mental, you know. So coming from a world where I sort of bought and sold and took a lot of drugs, you see trends on the street that are related to how democracy is forced into other countries and the influences that has. So you had the opium triangle, which is related to the Vietnam War. So there was um, a lot of heroin shipped into working class and black neighborhoods who then became really sort of addicted. Um, and that all came from areas that we were fighting to try and bring democracy in and overthrow their communist regimes. Um, so there's a link there, and I certainly saw that with Afghanistan, where although not just from our Western point of view, but from a human moral point of view, the Taliban were not the nicest of people. Okay, that's a given. All right. Whatever your views on the hijab and the burqa are, whether that's an expression of your Muslim faith, or whether that's an oppression of your femininity, whatever your views on that are, it happened. It does happen, and that's something for another day. But there are loads of reasons why the Taliban are really bad, and not just because they didn't allow you to have TV or music or dancing. Some of the violent fuckers. However, they had a way of controlling their locality in a way that was necessary for the people there, and served a certain set of purposes. One of the things, and the only reason I'm saying this is one of the things it did do was it curtailed the opium trade in a way that it has not once we gave them democracy, once we forced our political system onto them. Then the poppy fields flourished, and people really um, started to earn a lot of money out of the opium trade, and heroin sort of flooded the West and became much cheaper, and people um, were overdosing much more because of uh, higher quality rates of heroin on the market. So that's something that's really influenced by an idea that we set democracy in. Now, I think one of the ways that I'm trying to reimagine what it would look like, because I think we've reached a place where this political system is not fit for purpose anymore. There are ways in which we can support one another, and have our laws passed, and agree to what is right and what is wrong, and what is moral and what is ethical, and what we should do with people that break that, and what we should do with people that do things really well, and how we should reward people. There's another way, I think. I don't know what that is. It's hard to know what something unimaginable is, because we can't imagine it. Okay, so we need to build from what hasn't worked in the past, and work out what it is we think we need as we move forward. But we certainly need something, because I don't think that our current political system is fit for purpose anymore. It doesn't represent the people, as shown by Brexit and the mainstream media. The people appeared to vote in a completely different way. Now there is an argument there that was the influence of big data, and that was how algorithms were manipulated in certain ways, and people were influenced. But that's also working on the assumption that people are stupid. You know, people are sheep, and people are fed a lie, and they go along with that quite happily. So that's where do you stand on that? I would like to think that people aren't necessarily stupid. My experience of humanity is not necessarily one that says that. I certainly have done some stupid fucking things in my time. There are moments when I'm daft as a brush, yeah, real stupid cunt. I like to think of myself as a bit more sort of reasonable most of the time. We don't always live in that society, for better or worse. So whether or not that's really the voice of the people coming through, or whether it was manipulated, is your call on that one. I certainly think there's an amount of influence that is not coming straight from an informed voter's perspective. It's coming from when you're around somebody that shouts the loudest, you end up sort of going along with that view, because you don't get any space to put an opposing view in. So there's an influence in that way, and I think that's certainly what we've seen sort of in past big political changes that have come as a surprise to the establishment. The legacy media. So imagining something new, something that serves us. I think we need to decide on how wealth is distributed. Do we need to change that? Is it okay to have 1% owning more than the collective 90%? I mean, that's fucking staggering figures, that sort of thing. I'm not sure if that's exactly the way it is. I think it's the 1% earn as much as the lowest third of the world, along those lines, something like that. But the point is, it's fucking staggering, the wealth gap between the richest and the poorest has never been so big as it is now. The slave trade has never, the entire history of the transatlantic slave trade doesn't add up to the people that are currently in slavery being trafficked in this moment right here, right now. And of course, there's a financial element to that. Of course, the whole idea of trafficking somebody is about you commodifying humans, whether it's for labour or for other purposes that are much more evil. You're commodifying humans. So we need to look at how money is going to serve us, or we serve it. I think if we're going to imagine a new sort of democracy, a new way of having a politic that governs us and allows us to be governed, allows us to say, these are the rules that I want, these are the rules that we all think are important for us. How the fuck do we translate that to everyone? And a part of me comes back to, and again, romanticised, I'm well aware of that, comes back to notions of a more tribal community, a corporate body where people know one another on a deeper level. Not that they're not just familiar with each other, they know each other. So you have tribal elders, that sort of thing. You have a council that you go to, that you know these people and you trust them, and they know you and they know your circumstances, and together we negotiate an answer to something. I'm really, really keen on that idea. So it takes a village to raise a child, that sort of thing. So we have a civic duty. We have an obligation to one another and to the environment to collectively come up with answers to how we move forward, or how we support one another in the moment right now. So I really, really like that as an alternative. There's like this magic number. I think it's around 100, give or take. You can research it. I'm sure you're more likely to do that than I am. I'll just pull shit out of the air. But around 100 people, and over that, communities start to fall down. So as I say, it's a off the cuff sort of number, but that kind of gives you, within a community or a tribe or whatever you want to call it, a collective, it gives you the right amount of people that can be, say, the academics or the professionals, the manual labour, the caregivers, the people to grow and develop food, those sorts of things. It gives the right amount of people and the right amount of competition between those people to be able to support everybody in that in a with a fair trade-off, with real sort of equanimity, and of course that is an ideal. It's socialist ideal, but there must be something to that. There must be something in a way where our local communities have more of the control. They're more accountable than elected officials who don't seem to be accountable to us. They don't seem to relate to us. They don't seem to really even listen to us. So there must be ways in which we can change the way that together we come up with principles that guide us. There must be a way that we can own our politics in a way that democracy's offered us, but I'm not sure it's come through with. Now, I'm sure there's shitloads of more that we can say on this, and we'll probably come back to it in future episodes, because it's mental. It's a real bastard of a topic. It's not, it can be very flat, very stale to talk about. It could be something that, you don't talk around the dinner table. Never talk about politics or bestiality or whatever the phrase is. We're uncomfortable to talk about it. And we're deliberately made uncomfortable talking about it because it's easy to simplify shit than it is to really negotiate it and navigate it with one another. So you're a snowflake, you're a Nazi. You're right, you're wrong. You're black, you're white. Not a race thing, an on or off binary. So we simplify it so we don't have to navigate it with one another. We've got to say we have a duty to one another. We have an obligation to ourselves and to our families and our friends and our community, and an obligation to the world that we share to live up to our duties of governing ourselves, not putting our faith in a system that doesn't necessarily do that, serves a different purpose. So that's what we need to do, I think. I haven't got any answers as to how we do that, but I'm willing to, ask more questions. Certainly willing to have a go with everyone about how we do it differently. I think it's about being more local. I think it's about being more community led, and then not necessarily mapping those views over everybody else, because the local is going to influence it in ways that we don't appreciate. I use the Taliban example for that one. Not that I think that they're the model, but they did control opium use and production in a way that better than our democracy coming in. It certainly hasn't curtailed terrorism. It hasn't made young Muslim men and women say, "Do you know what? The West is really nice. Let's have a little bit more of that." If anything, it's antagonised. If anything, it's sort of created that reaction of building fundamentalism, rather than building a free society for everyone, because we map it over. So I think we need to work from the bottom up. This is what we've got. This is what we need. What do we do with that? Rather than mapping something in from above and dropping it onto people. I'm not sure that works. I think we need another way of doing that. But anyhow, like I say, there's loads to go through with this. It can be a topic which is spiky. It can be a topic that people get anxious and angry about. It can be a topic that is it's not as fun as it could be. Do you know what I mean? There's not many rock and roll songs written about policy and governance. There's not, because it's not fucking sexy. That simple. But it is important. So, we've had a bash at it. We can come back to it if you want. That's cool. I'll leave you to it now. Rambled on for a little bit longer than you could probably cope with. I think the average attention span is about 20 minutes, so I apologise if you've fallen asleep before that. But thanks for tuning in. If you have tuned in, like I say, get your nan to tune in. Send me your knickers. Like and subscribe. We're not on Patreon. Me and my other characters are not on Patreon. We don't need funding for this sort of shit. We might do at some point, and that'd be cool, but we don't. We can't come with this anti-capitalist agenda and say, send us your money. But I know other people do, so maybe that's where we go in the future, but not for now. What we are going to do, though, I keep saying that, me and my other personalities, the collective we that is my mind. We're going to come back next week with sexuality, so that should be sexy, presumably. Or not. I'm going to wear clothes, all right? I promise you that. I'll be wearing clothes, at least on the top half, that you can see if you're watching this on YouTube. For those of you on podcast, I won't be wearing anything at all apart from nipple tassels, all right? So you can imagine that. We'll talk about sexuality, probably bring a bit of gender in that, because that's something that's sort of influencing things in current affairs. So that'll be interesting, or not, as the case may be. Have a good week. Try not to hurt anyone. Do unto others as you have done unto yourself. Don't get caught doing it if you're not doing that. All right. God bless you handsome motherfuckers, and I'll speak to you very soon. Bye-bye.